Hello, everybody, and good evening. Welcome to Conversations with a Vet. I have a wonderful guest waiting in the wings at the moment. And before we get to him, a couple of things I wanted to talk about. There is one event specifically that is coming up, and that is going to start November 7th at 3 p.m. Eastern time and go through the 9th at 11 a.m. And that's going to be at the Linville Adventure Pastures in Nebo, North Carolina. And it is family friendly. So this is an annual Veterans Day event held again in the Linville Adventure Pastures in Nebo, North Carolina. They're going to have 4 trail rides, 3 of which are stock friendly. They're going to have campfires, camping, and so much more. Everything, just camping, that's all free. Even the trail rides are free. However, they will have their food trucks there Saturday night. And so you will, of course, have to pay for your food there. But this is being hosted by Mind Over Land. This is one of their biggest fundraisers for them each year. Each year they have several different events for veterans only, and they go off-roading to several different places. They take no more than 15 veterans at a time, and they go everywhere from South Carolina, Georgia, Arkansas, Kentucky, pretty much, the East Coast, mid side of that as well. But on the for our Veterans Day weekend, they're going to be opening it up to family friendly as well as veteran supporters. So if you are interested, you can go out to mindoverland.org. It says buy tickets. However, there is no fee. It's more of an RSVP. They want to know how many people are coming so that they can make sure to section everything off appropriately. So go check them out. Okay, so I want to, without further ado, go ahead and introduce my guest tonight, Dave Rogers, to the stage.
How's it going?
Hello, it's going great. How are you, Dave?
Great, and I'm glad to be here. I watched a couple of your episodes, and it's great that you're out there sharing information of what's going on and who's out in the community.
Well, thank you. I enjoy doing it, and I'm happy and honored to have veterans like yourself come out and tell their stories. So let's start off by asking the question that I ask all of my guests is, tell me a little bit about who Dave Rogers was as a child.
I was a curious child. I always tell the funny story. I actually got kicked out of Catholic school
No.
for asking too many questions.
Really? That's a
Oh
thing?
yeah. Yeah, that's nuns didn't want you to ask a lot of questions. They wanted you to believe in what they were telling you, basically. And the big one for me, which I like to tell, is like, so we went to the Bronx Zoo because in New York, all the schools go to the Bronx Zoo, and we went to the Bronx Zoo, and then the week after we went to the Bronx Zoo, we were learning about Noah's Ark. And I was like, wait a minute, why didn't the lions and the tigers and all the other like carnivores like eat all the other animals on the ark? Like, because they don't talk about the provisions. And yeah, I just had way too many questions um, as a kid.
So
Uh,
when you left there, you got kicked out. Did you have to go to public school at that point, or?
yeah, so I went to public school. It was a different. I grew up in New York City, and classrooms during that time were very oversized. I mean, we had 45 kids to a classroom. It was jam packed. So, uh, it wasn't this a lot of this one on one.
Right.
You know, and like I said, I was just a very curious kid. I wanted to know about the world. I think I was very different from my family. My family just kind of it. So in my family, my father's a police officer. His father's a police officer. His father's a police officer.
Oh, wow.
Um, and if your father wasn't a police officer, maybe your father in my neighborhood was a firefighter. So either they expect you to either become a police officer or a firefighter. Like that was, the path that was written out for you. Um, and I grew up, I'm a Gen Xer. We were, the latchkey kids. Me and my brother, we had one key. My brother wore the key, and so we had to let ourselves in. My parents worked two jobs. My mom worked two jobs, and my dad was a police officer. And when he wasn't working on the force, he was building decks and stuff like that for people. So yeah, we didn't. Sunday was like our big day to get together, the whole family, and eat. But we weren't rich. We were middle class. Um, and my parents got divorced when I was young, when I was 8 years old. So I went through some things as a younger person. My mom got remarried. I hated my stepfather. Uh,
Okay.
so I ran away. I left home at 15. I lived on the streets of New York.
Oh, wow. That couldn't have been easy.
No, this was 1985. Um, and if anybody knows anything about the mid 80s was a terrible time, especially in like New York City. People talk about the homeless problem now, and yes, it is a problem, but homelessness in New York City in the mid 1980s was rampant. It was everywhere. You couldn't walk 10 feet without bumping into another homeless person begging for change. And you really have to look. Like if you look back at the photos of New York City during that time, there was homeless people everywhere. Um, and so I basically lived on the streets and had to survive. Um,
How long
I,
were you on the streets for?
almost 6 years.
Mm, wow. That's a long time.
It was, and honestly, I didn't think I would get off the streets, but I also kind of at the time wasn't looking to get off the streets, if that makes any sense. You kind of get into this life. You're depending on other people, and I mean, I wrote a little bit of this down I wrote a couple of short series of my memoirs of living on the streets in New York. I mean, I must have in that 6 year time, I must have worked like 500 jobs.
Oh, goodness.
Um, I would work a job sometimes in the morning. In the afternoon, I might work another job, like whoever would pay me cash.
Right.
I worked for McDonald's for a couple of months, and they didn't pay me because it was illegal to hire a kid under 18 back then. Um, but they would pay me like with food, and they would give me, I would go in, I was the guy who would go in and like take out the garbage and clean the bathroom and do all that other, like I worked so many, I ran the racks in the fashion district.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
yeah, they cracked down on that in like 88. They stopped letting kids do that. But yeah, homeless kids ran the racks. We cleaned up bars. um, I worked at nightclubs. I worked in a strip joint for a couple of months. Yeah, I did all sorts of jobs, whatever would pay me.
It's a
Um,
different time back then. Anymore, those things wouldn't be available for kids. But yeah,
no, and like I said, New York was different back then.
right.
Um, and not just that type of stuff, but so I'm an artist. Besides other things that I do, I'm an artist, and I've always been interested in art. And during that time, great artists like Andy Warhol, Roy Lichtenstein, Basquiat, like all these artists,
Yeah.
their studios were basically open. If they weren't throwing a party or a show or having a meeting, their studios were basically open, and you could walk in and go into their studio and see what they were working on. And you don't have that anymore. Like these big artists now, like you got to make appointments and go through a gallery and all this other stuff.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah, so like I said, life was very different. Shop owners would give us, hey, you want a job sweeping the floor? I'll give you a job sweeping the floor and we'll pay you in a sandwich. Or, most of the time it wasn't money, it was trade.
Right.
And that's because if you had a hot meal, like what else mattered at that moment? Nothing else mattered,
Yeah.
you know. So that's the life that I lived uh, in my teen years.
And you did that till you were 21? Does that sound about right?
That's all. I was 21. Um, so I was actually homeless when I joined the army, and
And how did that come about?
so I got into college. Um, I was living in a halfway house, and I got into college. And back then, the colleges and the school, like, so I didn't go to a regular high school to graduate. I mean, it was accredited high school from New York, but they were doing this experimental bridge kind of high school for kids who got in trouble, truant, stuff like that. That's when they started the whole leave no child behind types of
Yep.
programs, which is to me one of the worst programs that they've done to kids. But part of what was good that came out of it was these like bridge kind of high schools for kids who did want to go to school but didn't have the opportunity to go to a normal school, because you can't be homeless and go to a normal high school.
Right.
You know,
You have to have a
um,
residence.
right? You have that. Yeah, parents have to come in, whatever. So basically, we were guardians of the state, and I went to this high school on the campus of Bronx Community College, and my guidance counselor, Ms. Rodriguez, and I'll never forget her. I'll love her. I mean, she passed away a couple of years ago, but
Oh.
I'll love her forever. She never let me get away with anything. She put her foot in my ass so many times. She was like, "No, no, no, no. Let me tell you something. You're not going to live this life forever. You're going to get better." And she made me apply for college, and I'm like, "Why am I applying for college? Like, nobody's going to. Who's going to accept me? Like, But I got in. I got into college. I went to SUNY Westbury at first, and but I didn't. So again, something that was different back then. You couldn't be emancipated back then, really. Um, so when I first went to college, I was still depending on my parents' income for Pell Grants and stuff like that. And my father was a New York City police officer, and by that time, he'd been a New York City police officer about 20 something years. So I couldn't get like a lot of grants to go to school.
Right.
Um, so my guidance counselor in college was like, "Look, another option is you could join the military." And I actually had to go to court and get a waiver because I was homeless, um, to join the military. So,
Wow. Well, what made you decide to join the Army versus any other branch?
so this is this is another funny story. I didn't know much about the military, except for the commercials I saw. I mean, I know my grandfather and my great grandfather on my mother's side served in the military, and they were both in the Navy.
Okay.
And I, but I saw these commercials for the Marines, and I love their uniform. I'm like, I'm going to join the Marines. So if anybody knows anything about the recruiting station in New York City on 42nd Street, all of them sit in one office. Now it's like an underground, like they've built it kind of underground where you have to go down. But it was just that one office in that little square thing on the
Oh,
square.
wow.
So I walked in, and the Marine happened to be at lunch, and the Army guy's like, "You don't want to go to the Marines." He goes, "You got to come to the Army because you can't go airborne if you go to the Marines. You can only go airborne if you go to the Army." And I was like, "Well, that sounds cool to me. Like, what do I know? I'm like, does it really matter?" Um, so that's why I joined the Army, because I wanted to go airborne.
Now, at any point, were you in contact with your mom? Did she know
I,
you were going?
no, so my mom, she got sick. My mom has had this rare blood disease called thalassemia major.
Hmm.
I have the trade, I have the minor. She had the major, and it's a very rare blood disease. Um, and it kills your kidneys, it kills your liver. And
Wow.
so she was so sick for a long time, and then she got hooked on drugs. And I hadn't seen my mom um, by that point. I hadn't seen her at all. Um, and me and my dad weren't talking, because he just, I don't know, we just never really had that close relationship.
Hmm.
Um, and, we had a falling out, and it just kind of, during that time, I wasn't talking to anybody in my family except for my cousin. So I have my cousin Anne Louise, and she's kind of been like, um, the only really family I had during that time.
Right.
Um, but she was still kind of young and she had a lot of things going on. Um, but she was there for my high school graduation. She was there when I joined the military. Whenever I came home on leave, I would go visit her. She was like the only really family I had during that time of my life. So
Did you tell her when you decided you wanted to join the military? And if so, what was her reaction?
she was supportive. So my cousin, she was that one person. She was like Ms. Rodriguez. She always put her foot in my ass if she thought I was out of line. She'd always tell me straight what it was. But she never tried to hold me back or never tried to stop me from doing something, you know, that I felt I wanted to do. She's like, if that's what you feel you need to do, then go do it. Um,
Excellent.
yeah. So she was always very supportive. Um, and then, like I said, that's what saved me, though. That's joining the military is what saved me from living on the streets at the time.
Right. So tell me a little bit about what might have been going through your mind as you were either, I'm assuming, at a bus on the way to your basic training.
So I actually joined up with a buddy um, from New York, and we were just both sitting on the bus talking the whole ride down. I wasn't really, it's funny. I tell people basic training um, I'm not going to say easy, but basic training was not as difficult for me as it was for a lot of other people. And I think because I had lived on the streets for so long,
Yeah.
when you're living on the streets and, um, you're fighting to get food and you're fighting to get clothing and you're fighting for a bed. And all of a sudden, here's the army like, there's your bed, here's your clothes, eat this food.
Right.
um we're out in mud and I'm like, yeah, I've been through worse than this. Mud is nothing. Like, so physically it was demanding, but emotionally, mentally, not so much. um People yelling at me. I had people yelling at me all the time, like, get off my front, get out from in front of my store, don't sleep on this grate in front of my store, like, so yeah, that part um was pretty easy for me. And initially, when I joined, I'm like, oh, I'm just going to do some time and get my money for school and be out of here. Um, but I actually enjoyed military life. I liked being in the army. Uh, I liked the discipline, and
Nice.
I loved making a lot of friends. But my career was a little odd. So back then, now they got career counselors everywhere that you talk to. But back then, they didn't really have a lot of career counselors. I think the brigade had one, you know. Um, but my NCO, when I went in, said to me, he goes, don't be like me. He goes, I was stupid. I thought the military would be my forever life. And I thought that's all I needed. And at the time, so he was a Vietnam veteran. And at the time, they were pushing him out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. They were getting rid of a lot of the old guard, and this was 89,
Mm.
90. They were getting rid of a lot of the old guard. Um, but he gave me this phone number to the Pentagon, and I called this phone number and I put my name on a volunteer list.
Hmm.
And so what they would do is they would call you up, not always, but they would call you up and say, "Listen, we need someone to go here to fill in this spot." And it was optional. Like you could say no. I got things going on, or my family's got things going on. I can't go right now. But I would go. I'd be like, okay. And it wasn't always overseas. Sometimes I'd be like, listen, this new unit is standing up and we need to augment people into this unit. Would you go? And I was like, all right. Um, and the advantage to that was, so if you went, like I went to Bosnia because of that. And if you go, when you come back, normally your old position is gone, it's taken, wherever your unit was.
Yeah.
And then they would say, okay, you got two choices. Choice A is we got a list of duty assignments. And they read you this list of duty assignments, and you could pick one, any one you want. Sometimes they had a great list, and sometimes the list, not so good. Or you can go to any school you want in the military, but then you got to take a hardship tour.
Oh.
So you had a choice. So, like, either go to the school that you want to go to or take a hardship tour. And most of the time, I picked the tour that I wanted to go on. You know, I'm like, okay, I want to go here, and I want to go there, and I want to go there.
Fun.
So, a way to see the world, basically.
Right. Well, let's go back just a little bit. So you get through basic training. Now, what was your original MOS that you signed your contract to?
I was in 11 Bravo
And for those watching, that is
infantry. But I actually had a dual MOS because when I first signed up, I was going to go just reserves. And so I had signed up my contract originally back then I think it was a 92 Alpha. They changed it to 92 Yankee later, which was supply.
okay.
So I think it was an Alpha when I first joined or something. I remember it wasn't the same thing. It was I forget or like an 89 Zulu or something. It was some weird number when I first joined. And then when I got to basic, my drill sergeant convinced me to just go regular active duty.
Okay. Now, do you have any funny stories from basic training that you can remember?
Yeah, so we had this guy. Oh my God, I'll never forget this guy. We had this short little kid. We called him Mr. P.
Mr. P.
Yeah, we call him. So he came from a rich family, and his rich family thought that he needed some discipline in his life. So they signed him up for the military, and he should have never been in the military. Should have never been in the army. But he was constantly trying to get kicked out. He wouldn't bathe. That's why we call him Mr. P. He wouldn't bathe.
Oh.
So, and he was really short. I think he was like, I want to say he was like 5'1" at the
Oh,
time.
goodness. That's even shorter than me.
Yeah, he was like 5'1". So like none of the uniforms fit him. Like, his uniforms were always baggy. Like even the smallest uniform like never fit him. And we used to laugh that he has to wear like female uniforms. Yeah, we used to pick on this poor guy. But we were out of the range one day, and I'll never forget this. And he turned around and, you know, he just pointed his weapon at everybody in the range and went off and like almost hit the drill sergeant. It was insane.
He was firing?
Yeah, he was firing, and somebody said he's firing the wrong direction. Then he just turned around with his weapon and just kept firing. It was crazy.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, so he didn't last that long. But they put me in charge of him because I was a squad leader at the time. They put me in charge of him, and I had to like drag this little kid around. I felt like I had my own little like mascot going around on basic training.
Did you have to drag him in the shower?
Yeah. The drill sergeant was yelling at me. He's like, if you don't get him. But I think the funniest thing that happened during basic, so in basic training, you do the live hand hand grenades.
Hmm.
And so we go out to the hand grenade course, and it was a female drill sergeant who was running the course out there at the hand grenade course. And she's like, she grabs me by the straps. I got my, my, damn, I forget what they call them too. It's so long ago. They don't call them that now. Like the LC straps,
Yeah.
and you had
The
your packs and everything else like that. So she grabs me. She's like, "All right, listen to me, and I want you to listen closely." She goes, "You're gonna pull the pin, and you're gonna throw." So I pulled the pin and I threw the pin.
See, communication is key.
Communication is very much key.
Oh,
She threw
so
that grenade and then she jumped on top of me, and I was like, "Oh my god, it's so bad!" Like the guys teased me forever. Yeah, they teased me forever.
what a story. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, because I love hearing those funny stories. I mean, and it's funny now, right? Probably not so funny at that moment. But
Yeah, I mean, I think my punishment was, I think I had to do like 50 push-ups
that's
from
it.
that. Yeah, I had to do 50. Oh, I had like KP duty also. So
Okay.
KP duty is not like everybody, like you're not working in the kitchen, right? KP duty was like cleaning up all the trays and taking out the garbage. And I'm like, I've done this before. This is nothing. I didn't get in a lot of trouble in basic training. I was a pretty straight shooter, mostly because, like I said, it was a different life for me. Like I had it good. All of a sudden, I wasn't on the streets anymore. I had a hot bed and I had hot meals and I had clean clothes and all this other stuff. So it was not too bad.
So when you get out of and you graduate from basic training, do you go to AIT or
No, so I was on the delayed entry program.
okay?
So I went to basic, but then my drill sergeant convinced me when I got back to New York to re-sign my contract, and they offered me infantry. And I was like, okay, but the only way I'm going to take it is if I can keep my original contract because I had a bonus. They weren't doing big bonuses for the infantry back then, but they were doing bonuses for like they were having a hard time filling like a lot of the office slots.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was like, all right, the only way I'm going to do this is if I keep my bonus and I keep my other MOS, which was a smart move. I didn't realize it was a smart move at the time, but it was a smart move. Because let me tell you, there's not a lot of jobs for infantry soldiers when you get out.
Right.
But so what they did was, so because I did that and I re-signed my contract, I had to go back to basic training to Fort Benning for infantry school.
Oh.
And I didn't know that part. I didn't know I'm a kid. Like what do I know, right? Like I don't know much about the military. I'm like okay. I'm thinking it's going to be like just like training. I didn't realize it's going to be a whole nother boot camp.
That's nuts. Now you would have been 21 years old. And were you one of the older um
No,
recruits?
actually, so this was the funny thing. We had this guy, um, Mike. I'm trying to think of his last name. Um, we call him the science guy. So this guy, he had a PhD from marine biology. He was a marine biologist,
Wow.
and he decided he wanted to join the military, but he didn't want to be an officer. He wanted to be enlisted. I don't know why. I have no idea why. He was 6'3", like 260 pounds solid muscle.
Oh goodness.
Yeah. So I went to basic training with him, and he was 27 at the time, I think. And then we had two guys that were almost 30 years old that were joining because they really just had no other options. Um, and I've seen a little bit of that over the years. Like I remember when I was a sergeant for a unit in Korea, and this guy came in I think he was at the mat, 36 years old. and he had just joined the military.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
yeah. But a lot of those guys, like, like Mike, when he was in basic training, he was an E4, but then when he graduated, like 6 months later, he was an E5 because he had a PhD.
Wow.
I went in because I had a year of college. I went in as a PFC.
Okay.
So
And so
I was
you
going to
get
so my first basic, I was the highest ranking guy because I had college.
right. Yes. So, okay. So once you get through your second basic training, where do you go from there?
I went to Savannah, Georgia. Um, I was down in Savannah with the 24th Infantry Division. Um, I kind of moved around a couple of units while I was down there, um, because I was waiting to go to AIT for my other MOS.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, and
And
then
how long
that
were you
sort
there
of.
for?
So originally I was there for like 3 months, and then that got put on hold because we went to Desert Storm, we went to Iraq. So we were there in Iraq, with the 24th. And honestly, I didn't do much in Iraq. Um, I don't have war stories to tell. I basically spent my time filling sandbags
Yeah.
and doing roving patrols, and like really there was nothing going on for us at the time.
But still very important roles.
It was, and I had a good command. Um, my first sergeant, Sergeant Browning, he was a great guy. He actually was a really funny guy. So he stood about maybe 5'6", 5'7". He was not a really tall guy, but he was airborne infantry.
Oh, wow.
And when you would get in trouble, what he would do is, and I could never do it, like he would do a vertical leap from the floor to the middle of his desk and then lean into you. But he wouldn't yell, he would whisper to you. He'd be like, "What's going on with you? Why are you having problems? We don't need problems. We fix problems." Um, and then my commander was Captain Wolf, and he was a great guy. Football player in college, went to West Point. He was like 6'4", big, stocky guy. And what he would do is he would be out there every morning running PT with you. Whenever we went to the range, he was down there in the range shooting weapons with you. He was that kind of commander, that was always there with you. And I actually, um, he switched from regular active duty to, reserve officer duty,
Oh,
because he was. So what he would do is he would get to the ready reserves, and what he would do, he would deploy. So he would deploy, 9 months, and then come back and then just have to do like once a month drills.
okay.
Um, and he was the one. So when I told you about the phone number and I called the Pentagon, and he would actually request me
Oh, wow.
whenever whenever he had assignment, he would actually request me. He goes, "Oh, is Rogers on that list? I want Rogers to come with me." So I went to Bosnia with him, and we had a great time. And we did a tour in Egypt, which was a lot of fun. But he was just the kind of commander that you never forget.
Right.
Um,
Did you get to, in any of these places, did you get to mingle at all with the civilians or were you relegated to base?
a little bit in Egypt, but you had to be careful. People need to remember, like, so in the early 90s, early to mid 90s, actually, um, we had rations overseas, a lot of places. Like in Germany, we had gas rations because gas, people think gas is expensive here. Let me tell you, gas inexpensive is outrageous. Germany's outrageous. So we had gas rations. We had coffee rations because a lot of locals weren't allowed to buy American coffee in certain areas like Egypt and South Korea.
Wow.
We had cigarette rations. And so for me, like I didn't smoke. I never smoked. And I wasn't a coffee drinker. Like I know that sounds weird to a lot of people, but I'm a teetotaler. Like I grew up in an Irish family, you know, I'm a teetotaler. Um, so I drink a lot of tea. So I would save my coffee rations and my cigarette rations to trade. And I made the mistake of trading my cigarette rations in Egypt, and the Egyptian soldier got in trouble. Yeah, and I felt bad, but he wouldn't tell anybody. And my commander knew, like, you know, he knew that I traded, but I didn't get in trouble with the army. He's like, just don't do that again, because you know these guys, they don't get in a little bit of trouble; they get in a lot of trouble.
Right, right. Interesting.
Yeah,
So you didn't get to really try the cuisine there in those different places?
we did some like so we had, and again, it was a different time in the military. So like in South Korea, I remember when I was stationed in Korea, we used to go on maneuvers down. I was with the medical aviation unit over there, kind of like a MASH.
Right.
And we would go on these maneuvers, and you would go down by the riverbeds, and like there'd be a village like right there.
Oh,
And yeah, like there's like a village on the other side of the river or whatever. And we had katuzes, yeah, which are Korean soldiers working with you. And so in like they were mostly office jobs, like logistics and stuff. So I was the logistical sergeant for my unit then. And you know, we're out in the maneuvers and we have nothing but MREs, and the Katsusa would go, no, 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 no. Let's not eat MREs. Let's eat hot food. I'm like, where are we gonna get hot food? He goes, trust me. So we would take like 8 cases of MREs to this village. And then like 3 hours later, all these Korean women would come out and like bring us hot food. Um, you know, that's if you like Korean food. It was like kimchi and seaweed and um, lots of lots of fish and lots of rice. And, you know,
but it was
lots of
hot.
yeah. But it was a hot. It was a spicy meal too. It was a hot and
Yeah.
spicy meal. You know, a lot of stuff like that. Korea is a different place now. Like you know, Korea is very modernized compared to when I was there. And not saying it wasn't modern, but it wasn't modern everywhere. Like
Right.
you know, I was stationed um, Camp Red Cloud and up in Camp Stanley and over at the DMZ line over there and everything. You know, that was our command area. But to go from Seoul to like the north, there wasn't a lot of major highways. You were basically taking small roads, dirt roads, going by rice farms. And today it's like all modern. There's like highways everywhere and you know, big roads everywhere. It's a totally different place.
Right. So, out of all of those places that you were able to deploy to, did you have a favorite?
Um, Actually, my favorite assignment was Heidelberg, Germany.
Oh,
If you'd never been to Heidelberg, I was on a detachment there. I was actually at the time, I was with the 81st Reserve Command out of the South here in the United States. And I was stationed in Alabama at the time. Um, and I got called up to go do support um, for some deployments going on. And so they sent me to Heidel. Actually, I was supposed to go downrange
oh,
for my full time. But then when we got there, so it was me, I was an E5 at the time. And then there was this master sergeant. Um, and they needed someone in the command center who would go downrange part of the time, but be in the office to do the logistical stuff. And that was going to be the master sergeant. But this guy didn't know PowerPoint, didn't know he didn't go to school for the new they just changed the supply system like 2 years before, and I had gone to school for that. So he didn't know that. He didn't know the PowerPoint, how to do PowerPoint slides.
and
And
this is what year was this?
this
Best
was
guess.
this was 97.
Okay, and PowerPoint hadn't really been around all that long either at that point.
No, but he was supposed to go to school for it and never did. Like all the command sergeant majors and all the master sergeants were all supposed to go, because you're at the command level.
Right.
And some of these generals, like because it was the new thing, everybody wanted PowerPoint slides, right?
Yeah, and it's still around today.
Yeah. So the general was General Shinzeki at the time for headquarters Fifth Corps, and he ran basically Europe, and all the missions going on. So because they had all these deployments going on, they needed someone to put all the information into a PowerPoint slide.
Okay.
And the master sergeant was standing there going like, I don't know PowerPoint. He's like, I wouldn't know the first thing. So they look at me and they go, do you know PowerPoint? I'm like, yeah, I just finished my class on that. And I was kind of cocky. I'm like, yeah, I just finished the class. Like, I
I
can do
got
this.
this.
Yeah, I got this. So they're like, well, you're not going to be in the office every day. You're going to have to go down range still. I'm like, I don't care. I'm like, still, but an office job up in Heidelberg, pretty nice, works for me.
Wow.
So I didn't know like who was getting these briefings. I had no idea. Like, this was all, I was just told, go here, go to this office. And we actually worked at the Heidelberg headquarters for the headquarters Fifth Corps, which were the old vaults back from World War II. So we had like these giant, like 3 foot deep vault doors that we had to enter every day to go into work.
Right, right.
But it was good. I mean, if you've never been there, it's such a gorgeous town. I
I'll have
mean,
to put that on the places I want to go see.
it's so the downtown is, you can't drive downtown. It's all cobble streets. Early in the morning, like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, the little delivery trucks can come in, but nothing big, to deliver food, whatever. But it's all
Okay.
walking, and they have the world's oldest hotel that survived both World War I and World War II. And there was this church that survived both world wars, and all this gold statues and everything. But just a gorgeous area. And I had to walk through that in the morning to go to my job. So I would walk through the downtown to go over to the headquarters to work. Um, so I saw that every day. It was just beautiful. Um, and then I was sitting there. So I was, like I said, I was an attached soldier. I wasn't in the unit. So I
Right.
still had we called the Black Cat patch, the 81st Regional Support Command patch on. And the headquarters Fifth Corps looks like the Chrysler patch. And so one day, General Shinzeki comes into the dining hall because all the people work at the headquarters eat in the dining hall, the same dining hall. And he walks in and goes, what the hell is that patch? And why is it in my dining hall? This guy is not just like a guy passing through. And they go, no, 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 sir. He goes, those briefings you get every morning? He goes, yeah. He goes, those PowerPoint slides? He goes, yeah, I love those PowerPoint slides. They go, that's the guy who does them. And he walked over and he put down his challenge coin. He's like, anytime, anywhere. And just walked
Wow.
away. Yeah. So um that's like I think like the coolest story I have from my time in the service, and then,
That's wonderful.
6 months later, he became the chief of staff for the Army.
Okay.
Yeah. He got
Nice.
his fourth, he was a 3-star then. He got his 4th star and then went to chief of staff for the Army.
Okay. So at what point then did you decide you were going to be transitioning out of the Army?
Actually, I didn't have a choice. So in the last part of my career, I took another daring move because I'm all about daring moves. And a lot of people don't know that the Army has, it's called AGR, Active Guard Reserve. So you're active duty, but you work for either the reserves or the National Guard.
Hmm.
And I did both. So I started out with a reserve unit and then I moved to a National Guard unit. Um, and I moved to a National Guard unit because at the time I was interested in joining the FBI.
Okay.
I had my bachelor's degree. I was working on my master's degree. So my plan was to go to college, get my master's degree in criminology, and then join the FBI.
Okay.
And so I moved back to New York August 10th, 2001.
Okay.
I was on leave, on vacation, had not met my unit yet when the World Trade Center happened. And so I was at the World Trade Center with 1st and 69th Infantry, and I broke my neck down there.
Like
Um,
literally broke your neck?
Literally, yeah.
Oh my.
I got a plate with a fused bone with a plate in my neck.
Wow.
So I broke my neck down there, and I walked around for almost 2.5 months and didn't even know I broke my neck. I just kept having this pain in my lower back. And I kept going to my command, going, "Look, my back is killing me." Um, we were down in the World Trade Center 34 days, and then we switched to Homeland Security, and we were up at West Point, our unit. And the doctor at West Point, she was like, "Has anyone looked at your neck?" And I'm going, "But the pain's in my back."
Right.
So they did the X-ray, and they found that I had broken my neck, and so they flew me down to Walter Reed to do the surgery. Um, and I was still in recovery at the time when my unit got called up to go to Iraq. And so I was still on a profile. I couldn't put a helmet on my head because my neck was still recovering.
Right.
So the Army's like, "Well, you can't deploy. So if you can't deploy, you're done." So they sent me home on a medical leave, and AGR is different than active duty. Like active duty, you don't get out until you go through the medical screening process. But my unit was deployed, so I was just sitting at home, and I wasn't drilling. I wasn't getting paid. I wasn't getting points. I was just sitting at home. And then one day the letter came in the mail saying, "You're no longer in the Army. Have a nice day." I didn't,
Goodness.
yeah, I didn't transition. So there I was not getting paid. Um, I was couch surfing for a while because I was at the VA 3 days a week doing my physical therapy and my occupational therapy. And I was doing PTSD therapy and, all this other stuff. So it was a hard transition getting out.
I would say so. And I'm going to guess they provided you with no transitioning information.
Nothing. And um, it took a while for me to get my benefits because there was this argument. Yes, I was active duty, but I was active duty for the Guard, and I got injured at the World Trade Center, and the state of New York at the time, the National Guard wanted the federal government to pick up the bill, and the federal government wanted the state of New York to pick up the bill. A lot of people forget that the National Guard was even at the World Trade
Yeah.
Center. We were basically written off. Um, it took, it wasn't until the 20th anniversary, and I spent 20 years fighting to get recognition from the state of New York that we were down there. So it took 20 years to get that recognition.
Wow.
I mean, eventually they got all my medical stuff worked out, but yeah, there was a big fight in the beginning. State of New York's like, "No, the federal government's got to pick this up," and the federal government's like, "But he's was a state employee at the time, because the National Guard, you're a state employee." Um, so there was this huge fight between the two of them. Both of them sent me letters saying, "Thank you for serving your country, but you weren't serving your country, so we don't know what to tell you." So I was
That's
calling,
horrible.
yeah, I was calling congressmen and senators, and it was getting to me.
Well, yeah.
Here I was, like, I was doing what I was told to do. I was told, "Go here, do this," and I did it. And now my government's saying, "But you weren't serving your country." And you're looking at, all these parades and all this stuff for all the heroes of 9/11, and they basically forgot about the National Guard.
Right. Yeah.
Um, we,
So
yeah.
I think first and foremost, I think that's a horrible thing that you've had to endure. But I am glad that you have overcome and were able to get those benefits. And I'm sure it wasn't an easy task to do. Where are you today in your life? What are you doing today?
So um, I started a nonprofit called Cooking with a Veteran. Here's our Cooking with a Veteran. Um, like I said, it took me a while to get back on my feet to get better.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but one thing I know, and this is, and I'll argue with anybody, the military, the Veterans Affairs, they're not going to solve 22 a day. And the reason they're not going to solve 22 a day is because they're looking for a cure, and there is no cure. Um, but here's what happens, and this is what I remember from my time when I first got out and I was dealing with all this and PTSD and TBI and depression and everything. Um, it didn't matter how much therapy I went to. It didn't matter how much medication I took. When I got home at night, my life sucked because sometimes I wasn't able to feed myself, or I didn't know where my rent money was going to come from, or I didn't know I didn't have a car when I first got out. I was going to buy a car to go to a job that isn't
Right.
going to hire me. Um, because I was still kind of recovering during that time, and I'm dealing with PTSD, and I'm at the VA 3 days a week. Um, so all those struggles, all those things, how do you get better when your life basically sucks? Uh, it's impossible.
Right.
So um, I started cooking with a veteran after I got out because I realized that I wanted to help veterans not go through a lot of the struggles that I went through when I first got out. And it started at the program that I'm doing now actually started during the pandemic. I was up in New
Okay.
York. I was living on Long Island. Um, and I was involved with like the VFW, the American Legion, the DAV, the AMVETS. I was involved with all these groups. And I was a commander up there, and I was getting all these World War II and Korean veterans calling me, going, listen, the soup kitchen or the pantry, they're not delivering hot meals right now. I'm just getting boxed food. I'm 90 something years old. I'm not going to stand in front of my stove and try to cook a meal. Like, what do I do?
Right.
So I got together with a couple of my buddies up there, and we were driving around to these people's houses and picking up boxes and cooking the food and bringing it back to them.
Oh
Um,
goodness.
and we were doing a daily Zoom. Um, During the time we had veterans from like 11 different states calling in on the daily Zoom just to keep each other company. And then people wanted me to share what I was cooking, so I started doing the videos. And it's just kind of grown. So I was doing the videos, and then I was doing the live cooking. We were going out and cooking for veterans. I was getting donations from all sorts of places. And I'm like, listen, we're just going to go out and cook. And at times we were feeding like 120, 200 veterans
Wow.
out in the public. And it's just kind of grown from that. So a year and a half ago, um, I left all the other organizations. I turned all my memberships in, and I turned my program into a nonprofit. So what we do now is we raise money to buy grocery shopping carts to give to the VA. And we do that because I want to make sure, number one, that the veterans are getting the money directly. It's not just going to the VA. But number two, they're able to put food on their table because look, I remember like standing in that line in the pantry and you're a veteran who served it's kind of embarrassing, you
Right.
know.
Right.
And people see you like standing in that line. You're like, I can't believe I got to stand in this line. But with the grocery shopping cards, nobody knows. You just got this. It could have been a gift. It could have been
Right.
whatever. You know,
Exactly.
yeah. Nobody really sees that. It's just a grocery shopping card. So we buy grocery shopping cards. We still do live cooking events, and I do my videos. I just got back from Michigan. We fed 120 veterans and their families
Oh,
up at
that's
the
wonderful.
VFW. Yeah, we did classes at the VFW National Home. We did some classes. I taught them how to make broth, and um, we cooked 60 chickens. Uh,
Wow.
and potatoes and all this other stuff. Um, so yeah, it's been great. And it's been therapeutic for me, you
Yeah, I
know.
bet. Yeah. So let me bring that up. So if anybody is interested in checking out his website, you can go to cookingwithaveteran.org. And there is a lot of information on this website. You can also donate. He does have several cookbooks that are out there. And then there is, of course, like I said, cookbooks if you want to donate. And speaking of donating, so I have, let's see if I can show this. So I met you at Vet Fest this year.
Right.
And um, so you have several things that you can also purchase. Now, is that available to purchase through your website?
No, so on the website we just sell the cookbooks. We make our own seasoning.
Okay.
But I make those in batches, and people that follow me, they know when I make the batches, and they'll order some. I don't make enough right now. I don't have a big enough um, operation going on to make a ton. I'm trying to save up to on the side, like separate from. So this is the important thing people need to know about our nonprofit. 100% of the money we bring in goes out to feed veterans. Anything else that we're looking to do for the program, I'm looking to do through grants and stuff like that. So we are looking to expand our operation. One of the biggest things we're trying to do now is a mobile teaching kitchen,
Oh, nice.
because a lot of places will say, oh, we want you to come and do a cooking class, but we don't have a kitchen, or our kitchen's very small. So we're actually looking to build a mobile kitchen classroom where we can go out and do classes. We roll up, they pull out their stations, they set up, we teach a class, and then we clean up and we roll out.
Nice.
So we're looking to do that. We're looking to getting to our seasonings into the market. Um,
You
but
have some
that's
really good seasonings, and we did purchase one, and I've used it several times now. Absolutely love it. So you also have these challenge coins, if you will, and I'm going to show now. Are these out there at all for sale?
we usually have them with us at events. If someone wants a challenge coin, they can reach out to me. They're $10 plus shipping. Um, and again, the challenge coin is another way that we raise money. We also have the license plate program we're trying to push here in
Yes,
Tennessee. What we're trying to do, we're trying to change the way that we support our nonprofit. Donations are nice, fundraisers are nice. Fundraisers cost money,
hmm,
you know. So we're trying to build affiliate programs and the license plate program. If we could get the license plate program off the ground, we got to pre-sell 1,000 of them. But if we could do that, pre-sell that 1,000 and get to even the lower tier, we can feed 10,000 veteran families a year here in Tennessee.
that's incredible.
Yeah, so that's why we're trying to get that off the ground. We also have on there, if you live in Tennessee, we have the Tennessee Veterans Guide that we built. It's 156 pages of all the programs. I mean, I say all the programs, but I'm sure I'm missing a few. But this covers all of Tennessee, the service officers, the all the organizations that are out there, all the support for housing, for food, for all this other stuff. And we're constantly updating it. But it's a free guide for veterans to find information in Tennessee. And we built one for Long Island and New York City, because I lived on Long Island, New York City, so I know all the groups.
That's
Um,
wonderful.
yeah, so it's a great guide. It gives you good insight to what's available here in Tennessee for veterans.
That's wonderful. And anybody out there in the chats, if you have some questions for Dave, go ahead and put those out there now. I have so a couple of things. So of course, as we said, Jason has stated, we met you at Vet Fest, and that your devotion to your 501c3, of course, is incredible. And yes, we did get a couple things from you, and loving what you're doing with that. Also, he said thank you for telling us your story and for your service. Um, Jim says, Dave, thank you for your service. Ron says, great to meet you, Dave. Thanks for your service, brother.
Me too.
Super excited to have you here. And one of my questions that I ask is if you have anything for the newest generation interested in joining the military, what words of wisdom would you provide to them?
I would tell them, and I know it can be hard. I actually got my bachelor's degree while I was in service. Um, Take advantage. I mean, I did correspondence, and look, guys in the barracks laughed at me. I was always doing correspondence courses. I was always taking class, and classes were late at night because you're
Right.
working all day. Um, but it was worth it. It was so worth it to get out with my degree, because also I was able to use my GI Bill for my master's.
Oh,
Uh,
nice.
yeah, so take advantage of going to school while you can. There's lots of programs and travel. Part of the cooking, a lot of people see my cooking, and part of the cooking that you see is stuff that I learned when I was stationed overseas. Like when I was stationed in Germany, I had this great dish. It was a roasted duck, and it was so wonderful. And I was like, I want to speak to the chef. And the chef came out and he's like, what? You don't like it? I'm like, no, I love it. Will you teach me how to cook it?
Nice.
Um, a lot of my cooking I learned was from, hey, chef, can you teach me how to cook this? I want to make it one day.
So G23 has a question. He wants to know, is a hot dog a sandwich?
That's a complicated question. I'll tell you what, G23. So I'm working on my next cookbook. It's called Between Two Buns.
Ah,
That's my next cookbook, is called Between Two Buns. So be on the lookout for that, and I'll answer the question if a hot dog is a sandwich.
there you go.
Yeah.
Little teaser there, G23. All right. Ron Wayne's question is, what was your most memorable moment helping out other veterans? What a great question.
It is a great question. Now I got one for you. So this was recently. A veteran called me up. He was looking for help, and he was verified. I met him through another organization, and he was not a combat veteran. He didn't do a lot of time in the service, but he's still, one of my
Mhm.
brothers. And he's living on Social Security, and his wife's living on Social Security. They're both disabled, and she got approved for 100 dialysis treatments, but only 80 rides to dialysis, which I found was insane. I'm like, how do you get approved for like 100 treatments but only 80 rides? And he's like, look, it's a shame. I have to ask you this, but I need money for the rides. So I talked to my board. I'm like, we're going to give him the money, for the rides. And we gave him the money the next day. And we also gave him a grocery shopping card. And he was out there just crying, you know, one to thank me 100 times. And I'm like, this is what we do, you know. Um, that's that's why we're trying to do the license plate program, is because not a lot of areas have the availability to do that.
Right.
Um, and so if a service officer calls me and they say, listen, I got a veteran, I verified their status and they're in trouble and they need help, I want to be able to help them. I want to be able to say, okay, here you go. Like
Right.
that's what we're going to do for you. Um, but yeah, over the years of doing the cooking program, I had a Korean War veteran, didn't even know we were bringing him food. I heard from somebody else that he didn't have any food in his house.
Oh,
Uh, so we just brought him a bunch of ready to go meals. Um, and he was just so grateful for it. And, that's why we do it, because we don't want them to go through all these things.
Right, right. I think what you're doing is absolutely amazing and continuing to serve. And I want to thank you again. It's been a pleasure and an honor to have you as my guest tonight. So thank you very much for that. If you want to stay put for me, we're going to go ahead and get this wrapped up. And for everyone out there, go check out Dave Rogers, Cooking with a Veteran on Facebook. Cookingwithaveteran.org is his website for his 501c3.
And I have
So,
one last thing. If they live in Middle Tennessee, so what we started 2 years ago, and we're still doing, you talk about Vet Fest, we do a veteran fair here in Bedford County
nice.
every year because there's no resources south of Murfreesboro.
Yeah.
So we bring all the resources to Bedford County, and we've helped so many veterans through the fair, and it's free to go. There's no charge. We don't charge the organizations to come out and set up. It's all about um, just bringing that information, that support to veterans in Middle Tennessee.
Yeah. I've got one more question for you. That's from G23. And he says, how do you guys verify if someone truly served and not stolen valor?
So what I do is I depend on veteran service officers and the VA. So the grocery shopping cards, I mean, if I know the veteran, if I know they're a veteran, I know them personally, and I do know veterans who need help, and I will sometimes give them some help. But you're right, I have no way to verify. So I donate all the grocery shopping cards to the VA and local VSOs as we can, and then they give them to the outreach coordinators and the social workers because they know the veterans who are struggling, who's having a hard time.
Right.
I know, I get it, it's hard. And look, I get those scam calls too. I get those people call me up and like, and then their story doesn't match. Oh, I'm a disabled veteran, but I didn't get disabled in service, and but you can't find my name because my social security number doesn't match, or I got married and my name changed, and I'm like, yeah, none of that makes sense, like nothing. So to be on the safe side, I give it to VSOs and the VA.
Yeah.
But we only give them the grocery shopping card. So this way I know that they're veterans out there buying food and and there's the other important thing. Like the reason we do the grocery shopping cards is not all the pantries have fresh produce, milk, eggs, things like that. So
Ah, wonderful. All righty. Well, everybody, thank you very much for joining tonight. And hopefully, I don't have a guest scheduled yet for next week, but we're going to do our very best to get one. So feel free to join me again next week. And y'all have a wonderful and very safe week coming up. Thank y'all.
thank you.